My sister mocked my cheap funeral dress in front of everyone, calling me the family failure. She had no idea the dress cost $30,000, I owned the brand she modeled for, and her termination letter was already signed. This is how I destroyed them all. You wore that to Mom's funeral, my sister sneered, her diamond cuff nearly blinding me as she flipped her perfectly styled hair. I mean, I get it, times are tough for you, but couldn't you have at least tried? I smoothed down my simple black dress, hiding a smile. What she didn't know, I designed this dress. I also own the brand on her feet, the boutique we were standing in, and the company that just cancelled her modeling contract an hour ago. My name is Elise Morgan, and I learned long ago that the best revenge is served in couture. The morning of my mother's funeral dawned gray and misty over Newport Bay. The kind of weather that made the glass walls of modern churches look like they were weeping. I stood before the mirror in my childhood bedroom, one of the few rooms Dad hadn't renovated in his endless pursuit of contemporary living, and carefully zipped up my dress, black crepe, minimal structure, no embellishments, to the untrained eye. It looked like something from a department store. To anyone who truly understood fashion, it was a $30,000 piece of wearable art. But my family had never truly understood anything about what I did. The church was already half full when I arrived in my 10-year-old Prius, parking between Blake's leased Mercedes and Rachel's borrowed Porsche. Through the tall windows, I could see them already holding court, accepting condolences like royalty-receiving subjects. My father, Gerald Morgan, stood near the altar in his Armani suit, the one from 2018 he thought no one would notice was outdated. Blake, my older brother, kept checking his phone between handshakes, probably monitoring whatever financial disaster he was juggling at the bank this week, and Rachel, my baby sister, posed near the flowers in a Valdair cocktail dress that cost more than most people's monthly rent. I slipped in through the side entrance, hoping to avoid the reception line, but Aunt Martha caught me immediately. "Oh, Elise, darling," she cooed, her eyes doing that quick up and down scan that wealthy relatives perfect by age 40. "How are you holding up? And how's the little boutique?" "It's fine, Aunt Martha. Thank you for asking. You know," she leaned in conspiratorially, "my neighbor's daughter just opened a shop on Etsy, doing quite well with handmade jewelry. Maybe you two should connect, share tips." I smiled, the kind of smile I'd perfected over 15 years of family gatherings. "That's very thoughtful. I'll keep it in mind." The service itself was beautiful, if you like that sort of orchestrated grief. My mother would have hated it, the enormous floral arrangements. The string quartet. The pastor who'd met her exactly twice droning on about her dedication to family. Mom had been dedicated to her craft. To the small boutique she'd run for 30 years. Teaching women that elegance wasn't about labels but about understanding who you were. It was during the reception afterward that things truly began. "There she is," Rachel's voice carried across the church hall. She was surrounded by her usual quartet of followers, women who thought proximity to a C-list model made them influential. "Elise, we were just talking about you." I approached with my coffee black, no sugar, talking about you. I approached with my coffee black, no sugar, served in the church's finest paper cups. "All good things, I hope." "Of course." Her smile was sharp as her contoured cheekbones. "I was just telling Vivian how brave you are, keeping Mom's little shop running, though honestly," she lowered her voice to a stage whisper. "Wouldn't it be easier to just work retail, I mean? Nordstrom has excellent benefits." Vivian, whose husband had just filed for bankruptcy but didn't know I knew, nodded sympathetically. "There's no shame in a steady paycheck." "Elise, my daughter started at Macy's and worked her way up to department manager." "I'll keep that in mind," I said, taking a sip of truly terrible coffee. That's when Rachel delivered the blow she'd clearly been rehearsing. "I just can't believe you wore that to Mom's funeral." She gestured at my dress with her manicured nails, gel tips. I noticed. Not the acrylics she used to afford. "I mean, I get it, times are tough for you, but couldn't you have at least tried? Mom deserved better than off the rack." The quartet tittered appropriately. Blake appeared at Rachel's shoulder, ever the opportunist when it came to family pylons. "Hey, Ellie," he said, using the childhood nickname I'd specifically asked him to stop using when I turned 30. "Listen, if you need to borrow money for something appropriate next time, just ask. We're family." "How generous," I murmured, noting the stress lines around his eyes that his concealer couldn't quite hide. "I'll remember that. The offer stands for the shop, too," he continued, warming to his role as successful older brother. "I could probably get you a small business loan. The rates would be brutal given your situation. But it might keep you afloat a few more months." My situation. If only they knew. Don't overwhelm her. Dad finally joined our little circle, playing the patriarch even as I noticed his cufflinks were replicas of the Cartier ones he'd sold 6 months ago. Elise is doing fine with her hobby. Your mother left her that space free and clear sometimes. That's enough for some people. Some people. As if I were a different species. Content with less. Ambitious for nothing. She's not doing that badly, Rachel conceded with false generosity. That vintage Prius is very eco-conscious, and living in a studio apartment means less to clean, right? The assumptions rolled over me like old friends. The Prius I drove to family events because the Bentley would raise questions. The studio apartment that was actually my private floor at the Meridian Towers. The little boutique that served as my personal design laboratory when I needed to touch fabric. To remember why I'd built an empire on my mother's foundation of understanding women's relationships with their clothes. Oh, Elise, cousin Jennifer joined our growing circle of condescension. I've been meaning to ask. I have some clothes I was going to donate. Would you want them for your shop? They're barely worn. Mostly designer. Well, designer-ish. You know. Banana Republic. And Taylor. Good brands. That's very thoughtful, I said, my smile never wavering. The reception continued in this vein for another hour. Each relative, each family friend, found a way to offer help, advice, or barely concealed pity. They discussed vacation homes I couldn't afford while I owned properties in 12 countries. They suggested career changes while I employed 8,000 people. They offered to introduce me to their investment advisors while my portfolio could buy and sell theirs 100 times over. And through it all, Rachel continued her performance as the successful sister, generous with her condescension, quick with her barbs about my appearance, my choices, my stubborn refusal to face reality, standing there in the church where my mother had taught Sunday school, surrounded by people who thought they knew my worth down to the dollar. I made a decision, not out of anger. I'd long since moved past that, not even out of hurt. Their opinions had stopped mattering years ago, but out of a cold, clear recognition that sometimes the kindest thing you can do for people is show them exactly who they are when the masks come off. My phone buzzed. A message from my assistant about the Valdair contract renewal. Perfect timing. I excused myself to the bathroom, typed a quick response, and returned to find Rachel holding court by the memorial display, telling anyone who'd listen about her upcoming campaign as the new face of the brand. It's basically a done deal, she was saying. The creative director loves my look, says I embody their woman, successful, sophisticated, uncompromising. I thought about the email I just sent, about the meeting tomorrow where that same creative director would explain that the brand was moving in a new direction. About the bills piling up in Rachel's Calabasas apartment, the ones she thought no one knew about. That's wonderful, Rachel, I said, raising my paper cup of terrible coffee in a toast. To new directions. She preened, missing the irony entirely. They all did. As I left the reception, accepting a few more offers of charity and career guidance, I looked back once. At my family. Dressed in their borrowed finery. Living their leveraged lives. So certain of their superiority over quiet. Struggling Elise. By the end of the week, they'd all know differently, but for now, I drove away in my sensible Prius, just another failed dreamer in a city full of them, carrying secrets worth more than all their assumptions combined. The next morning, I returned to my mother's boutique on Cypress Avenue. To everyone else, it looked exactly as it had for 30 years, a modest storefront squeezed between a dry cleaner and a vintage bookshop. The painted sign reading Eleanor still hung above the door, its gold lettering faded but dignified. What they didn't know was that I'd purchased the entire block 6 years ago through one of my holding companies. Inside, morning light filtered through the original windows, catching dust motes that danced above racks of carefully curated pieces. My mother had possessed an extraordinary eye, able to spot potential in a garment the way others might recognize a masterpiece in a gallery. I'd learned at her knee, watching her transform women with a tuck here. A suggestion there. An understanding of how clothes could be armor or wings, depending on what you needed. My phone buzzed with the family group chat Dad had insisted on creating after Mom's diagnosis. Grief support, he'd named it. Though it functioned more as a bulletin board for their respective performances of success. Blake. Crushing it at the quarterly review. Mom would be proud. Rachel. On set for the Valdair shoot. Thinking of you all. Dad. Close the Steinberg deal. Your mother always said persistence pays. Lies layered upon lies. Like poorly constructed garments where the seams showed if you knew where to look. Blake's bank was under federal investigation for predatory lending practices. Something he'd conveniently failed to mention. Rachel wasn't on any set. Andre had suspended her contract 3 days ago pending restructuring, though she hadn't received the termination notice yet, and Dad's Steinberg deal. I'd had my lawyers kill it last week when I discovered it involved my mother's memorial fund as collateral. I set my phone aside and walked through the boutique, running my fingers along the fabrics. In the back office, hidden behind a panel my mother had installed in the 1990s, lay the real heart of the space. My first design studio, where E. Morgan Atelier had been born 15 years ago while my family thought I was playing shopkeeper. The irony wasn't lost on me. They pitied me for clinging to this place, never realizing it was my sanctuary, my laboratory, the root from which an empire had grown. Every major collection began here, in this 12 by 15 foot room with its ancient Singer sewing machine and walls covered in my mother's careful notes about construction and drape. My assistant, Elise, called as I was examining a bolt of Italian wool my mother had stored for something special. "Good morning, Ms. Morgan. I have the reports you requested. Go ahead. Your brother's bank is facing a liquidity crisis. The federal investigation is expanding. His personal assets are leveraged at 340% of their value." I wasn't surprised. Blake had always confused the appearance of wealth with its reality. Never understanding that true power came from what you could build, not what you could borrow. Your father's real estate holdings are in foreclosure proceedings on 3 properties. He's been using creative financing to hide the losses, but the house of cards is collapsing. Estimated timeline 6 to 8 weeks before it becomes public. And Rachel? Living on credit cards that are maxed out. Her apartment lease ends next month, and she doesn't have the funds for renewal. The Valdair termination will be official tomorrow. No other agencies are showing interest. I closed my eyes, seeing my baby sister at 5, parading around in mom's heels, declaring she'd be famous someday. She'd gotten her wish, in a way Instagram famous, which in Los Angeles counted for something until the bills came due. "There's more," Alicia continued. "They've been approaching your business contacts." Blake reached out to Nathaniel Chen at Chen Industries about a family investment opportunity. Rachel contacted 3 of your brand ambassadors suggesting they could get her a friends and family discount on purchases. Your father has been name-dropping you to potential investors, implying a connection to Morgan Group without saying it outright. Now that was interesting. They'd spent years dismissing my work, and yet when desperate, they tried to trade on a connection they didn't even know they had. "Send me the full files," I instructed, and move forward with the plans we discussed. After ending the call, I spent another hour in the boutique, cataloging pieces for donation to fashion students. My mother would have wanted that, as I worked. Memories surfaced: Rachel at 16, sneering at my decision to skip college for playing with clothes, Blake at his MBA graduation, joking that at least one Morgan child had ambition, Dad, just last year, suggesting I sell the boutique and do something real with my life. The afternoon brought unexpected visitors. 3 women from the funeral yesterday, Rachel's quartet minus their queen, stood uncertainly at the door. "Is this a bad time?" Vivian asked, her Botox preventing much expression but her voice carrying genuine concern. "Not at all. How can I help you?" They exchanged glances. "We wanted to apologize for yesterday." "Rachel can be enthusiastic," I supplied diplomatically. "Cruel," Vivian corrected. "And we went along with it. Your mother was always kind to us, and we disrespected her memory by treating you that way." I studied them, 3 women clinging to relevance in a city that worshipped youth, surrounding themselves with people like Rachel, who made them feel connected to something desirable. They weren't bad people, just lost ones. "Would you like some tea?" I offered. "Just lost ones. Would you like some tea?" I offered. They stayed for an hour, marveling at the boutique's hidden treasures, sharing stories about my mother I'd never heard. Vivian, it turned out, had been dressed by my mother for her wedding 30 years ago. "She made me feel like Grace Kelly," Vivian said, touching a vintage scarf reverently. "Not just beautiful, but significant, like I mattered." That was my mother's gift: seeing people. Really seeing them, and reflecting their best selves back through fabric and form. It was the principle I'd built Morgan Group on, though scaled to a global level. After they left, pressing cards into my hand and insisting on lunch when you're ready, I locked up and drove to my real office, not to the executive floors at Havenmark that would come later, but to the design studio in the Arts District where my senior team was waiting. "Show me the numbers," I said, settling into the conference room. The presentations rolled past: quarterly earnings up 18%, the Asian expansion ahead of schedule, 3 potential acquisitions in Europe. But my mind kept drifting to family, to the elaborate fictions they'd constructed about their lives and mine. "The Valdair situation," my VP of brand management said carefully. "Do we proceed with the termination?" I thought of Rachel's sneer, her casual cruelty, her assumption that I was somehow less than, but I also remembered her at 7, crying because someone at school had called her ugly, and how I'd spent hours teaching her to braid her hair into a crown, telling her she was a queen. Proceed, I said quietly, but include the standard transition package. She'll need it. My team knew better than to question the generosity. They didn't know Rachel was my sister. I'd kept my family entirely separate from my business life. To them, she was just another model whose behavior had become a liability to the brand. That evening, I stood on my private terrace at Meridian Towers, looking out over the city lights. Somewhere out there, my family was maintaining their facades, unaware that the foundations were already crumbling. Blake would discover the federal audit tomorrow. Dad would receive the foreclosure notices by the end of the week, and Rachel would wake to an email that would shatter her carefully curated image. I could stop it all with a few phone calls, wire transfers to cover their debts, word to the right people to make their problems disappear. It would be easy, cost me barely a fraction of what I'd earned last quarter alone. But that would require them seeing me. Really seeing me. And in 20 years, they'd never managed that. I was the daughter who'd inherited mom's hobby. The sister content with simple things. The family member they could pity to feel better about themselves. My phone rang. An unknown number. But I recognized the prefix, the federal building downtown. Ms. Morgan, this is Agent Davis with the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. We understand you might have information relevant to our investigation into Western Pacific Bank. Blake's Bank. Where he'd so proudly become regional manager. Never questioning why they'd promoted him so quickly. Never wondering if his last name and perceived connections had played a role. I said carefully. What specifically are you investigating? As Agent Davis outlined their case: fraud, predatory lending, money laundering, I realized my brother wasn't just arrogant. He was complicit. The family tragedy I'd been orchestrating might be a mercy compared to what was coming for him legally. We'd appreciate your cooperation, Agent Davis concluded, given your position in the financial community. He didn't elaborate on what position he thought I held, but clearly, someone had done their homework. Send me the formal request, I said. I'll have my lawyers review it. After hanging up, I poured myself a glass of wine, a 1982 Chateau d'Aquin. I'd been saving for a special occasion. Perhaps this qualified. My family's illusions weren't just crumbling. They were about to explode. And at the center of it all, they'd find me. Not the Elise they'd invented, poor, struggling, pitiable. But the real one. The one they'd never bothered to see. The one who'd taken our mother's wisdom about understanding people through what they wore and built it into something they couldn't even imagine. Tomorrow, the first dominoes would fall, but tonight, I raised my glass to the city lights, to my mother's memory, and to the exquisite truth that the best revenge isn't served cold. It served couture. The boutique on Cypress Avenue had never looked more innocent than it did that Tuesday morning. Sunlight streamed through the windows, looked more innocent than it did that Tuesday morning. Sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating the carefully arranged displays that most people assumed were my entire world. I arrived early, as I always did when I needed to think, letting myself in through the back entrance that opened onto a narrow alley where delivery trucks had been unloading bolts of fabric for 3 decades. Inside, everything appeared exactly as the world expected: a small, respectable dress shop clinging to life in an era of fast fashion and online shopping. The front room held maybe 400 square feet of retail space, with racks of carefully curated pieces that I rotated seasonally. A single changing room, a modest counter with an ancient cash register I kept for appearance's sake, though all transactions actually ran through a state-of-the-art point-of-sale system hidden beneath. But the boutique was like an iceberg. What showed above? The surface bore no resemblance to what lay beneath. I made my way past the vintage mannequins, through the stockroom where I'd hidden as a child during inventory days, reading fashion magazines while my mother counted and recounted their modest selection, at the back wall. I pressed my thumb against what looked like an old light switch. The biometric scanner, concealed behind layers of paint and deliberate aging, verified my identity in milliseconds. The wall swung inward on silent hinges, revealing the first of many secrets. The immediate space beyond could have belonged to any high-end atelier in Paris or Milan. Clean lines, perfect lighting, walls of pure white that made the colors of the fabric sing. This was my true design studio, where E. Morgan Atelier had been born while my family believed I was barely keeping my mother's shop afloat. But even this was mere prelude. I descended the stairs, imported Italian marble that no customer would ever see, to the first sublevel. Here, the boutique's foundation connected to a network of spaces I'd acquired over the years: the dry cleaner next door I'd acquired over the years, the dry cleaner next door I'd bought it 5 years ago, converting its basement into a pattern-making workshop where my senior technicians could work undisturbed, the vintage bookshop on the other side. Its lower level now housed my archive, climate-controlled rooms containing every significant piece from every collection I'd ever created. The real revelation lay deeper still. 2 stories below street level, accessed by a private elevator hidden behind what appeared to be a storage closet, sat the nerve center of my West Coast operations. The space opened into a design floor that spanned the entire block, 40,000 square feet of creative workspace invisible to the world above. Screens lined one wall, displaying real-time sales data from Morgan Group's 63 global locations. Design teams worked at Constellation desks, their discussions a polyglot mixture of French, Italian, Mandarin, and English. "Good morning, Ms. Morgan," someone called out, and heads turned briefly before returning to their work. Here, they knew exactly who I was. No pretense. No pity. No assumptions beyond the expectation of excellence I demanded from myself and everyone around me. I made my way to the central command station where Elise waited with the morning reports. Multiple screens showed footage from the previous day's funeral. Facial recognition software analyzing the attendees. Cross-referencing with financial databases I shouldn't have had access to but did. "Your predictions were accurate," Elise said without preamble. "Your brother accessed his emergency accounts last night. He's trying to move money offshore." "Too late for that," I murmured, watching the transaction flags appear on screen. "The FBI will have frozen his assets by now. Your father has scheduled meetings with 3 private lenders today. All specialize in distressed assets. They'll turn him down. I've already had conversations with their risk assessment teams." Elise's expression didn't change, very little surprised her anymore. "And Ms. Rachel?" I pulled up the termination notice that had gone out at 6 a.m. Pacific time. "Clean. Professional. Citing strategic realignment of brand ambassadors. The kind of corporate speak that meant nothing and everything. She'll receive it when she wakes up, probably around noon, if her patterns hold." The irony wasn't lost on me that I could predict my sister's sleep schedule from her social media activity, but she had no idea what I did with my days. To them, I opened the boutique at 10, helped the occasional customer, closed at 6, went home to my studio apartment, and repeated the cycle. The mundane life of a failed creative. They'd never asked why the boutique's lights sometimes stayed on all night, never wondered about the delivery trucks that came and went at odd hours. Never noticed that the local customers who occasionally stopped by wore Louboutins and carried Hermes bags that cost more than most cars. A notification flashed on my personal screen. The Wall Street Journal wanted a quote about Morgan Group's upcoming expansion into sustainable luxury. I typed a quick response under my corporate identity E. Morgan. The reclusive designer, whose gender-neutral initial, had let the press assume whatever they wanted for years. Most thought I was a man. The few who'd gotten close to the truth had been redirected by my PR team's carefully crafted mythology about a designer who preferred to let the work speak for itself. "Ma'am?" One of my junior designers approached hesitantly. "The fabric samples from Lake Como have arrived. Should we review them upstairs?" "Bring them to Studio 3, I instructed, and pull the mood boards for next season's collection." The morning progressed in this dual rhythm, the public face of a struggling boutique owner above. The reality of a fashion empire below. I reviewed samples that would become dresses selling for tens of thousands, approved marketing campaigns that would run in 30 countries, signed off on store renovations for our flagship locations in Tokyo and London. Between tasks, I monitored my family's unraveling through the feeds. Blake had discovered the FBI freeze on his accounts when his mortgage payment bounced. The panic in his text messages to our father was palpable, even through the sterile interface of data mining. "Dad, something's wrong. They're saying I'm under investigation. This has to be a mistake." Gerald Morgan's response was typically self-absorbed. "Handle it. I have my own problems right now." And Rachel, she'd gone silent after receiving the termination notice. But her credit card activity told its own story, 3 declined charges at her usual breakfast spot. A failed attempt to book a panic session with her therapist. Her credit card activity told its own story, 3 declined charges at her usual breakfast spot, a failed attempt to book a panic session with her therapist, an Uber ride to our father's house in Bel Air. They were converging, drawn together by crisis as they'd never been by success. The family that had stood apart at my mother's funeral, each isolated in their bubble of perceived superiority, would huddle together now in shared desperation. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I recognized Rachel's secondary cell. The one she thought no one knew about. "Can we talk, please?" I stared at the message, remembering a dozen childhood moments. Rachel taking my favorite doll and crying when I tried to get it back. Our parents scolding me for not sharing. Rachel wearing my homecoming dress without asking, stretching it beyond repair. Then telling everyone I'd gained weight. Rachel at mom's diagnosis. Too busy with a photo shoot to visit the hospital. Leaving me to hold our mother's hand through chemo sessions. But also Rachel at 3, crawling into my bed during thunderstorms. Rachel at 8, proudly presenting a macaroni necklace she'd made for my birthday. Rachel at 13, sobbing in my arms when her first boyfriend dumped her via text. Not yet, I typed back, then deleted it without sending. Let her wonder, let her feel, for once, the uncertainty of being deemed unworthy of response. Ms. Morgan, Elise appeared at my elbow. The Times wants to know if you'll comment on the rumors about Morgan Group acquiring Valdair. I smiled, the first genuine expression of pleasure I'd felt all week. Tell them we don't comment on speculation. And the truth? We closed the deal an hour ago. Valdair, the brand whose campaigns my sister had fronted for 2 years. Whose creative director she claimed to have wrapped around her finger. As of this morning, it was my latest acquisition, purchased through a shell company they'd never traced back to me until I wanted them to. The afternoon brought an unexpected visitor. Through the security feeds, I watched my father's Mercedes pull up outside the boutique. He sat in the driver's seat for a full 5 minutes, pride warring with desperation on his face. Finally, he emerged, checking his reflection in the window before entering. I met him upstairs, playing the role he expected. Elise in a simple cardigan and slacks, organizing inventory, looking up with mild surprise when the door chimed. "Dad, I wasn't expecting you." Elise, he glanced around, his real estate developer's eye automatically calculating square footage and rent ratios. "The place looks the same. Consistency is important to our customers," I said mildly. "Can I get you some tea?" He waved the offer away, his Rolex catching the light, one of the few genuine pieces he had left. "I'll be direct. I'm in a bit of a situation. Temporary cash flow issue. These things happen in business. Of course. I was wondering if you might have any savings you could spare. As a loan, naturally, with interest." I tilted my head, playing dumb. "How much do you need?" "Interest." I tilted my head, playing dumb. "How much do you need?" 200,000 should cover it." 200,000. A rounding error in my world. But to him. Salvation. I could picture the calculations in his head. Surely even Elise, with her pathetic little shop, must have saved something over the years. "I wish I could help," I said slowly. "But the boutique barely breaks even. You know that." His face tightened. "Surely you have something set aside. Your mother must have left you." "She left me the shop," I interrupted gently, "which, as you've pointed out many times, is more burden than asset." He stood abruptly, anger flashing across his features before he controlled it. "I see. Well, I suppose I shouldn't have expected, never mind." At the door, he paused. "Your brother's in trouble. Real trouble. The FBI came to his house this morning." "I'm sorry to hear that. And Rachel?" "She lost the dairy contract. She's talking about moving back home. That must be difficult for everyone." He stared at me. And for a moment, I thought he might actually see me. See the careful neutrality that revealed nothing. See the boutique that was so much more than it appeared. See the daughter he'd dismissed for 20 years. But the moment passed. His shoulders slumped as he left, the weight of his crumbling empire visible in every step. I returned to my underground office, where screens showed the ripple effects of the day's events. Valdair's stock price adjusting to news of the acquisition. Blake's bank under emergency audit, my father's latest loan application already flagged for rejection. And through it all, the boutique above continued its charade, a quaint little shop on a forgotten street. Holding the memories of a woman who'd understood that true elegance came from knowing exactly who you were. My mother had built her modest dream here. I'd built an empire beneath it, invisible to those who'd never bothered to look deeper than the surface. Soon enough, they'd all understand. But for now, I was content to remain what they'd always believed me to be: poor, struggling Elise, playing dress-up while the real world passed her by. The joke, as always, was on them. The Havenmark Tower pierced the Los Angeles skyline like a needle through silk, 42 floors of glass and steel that caught the morning sun and threw it back in sheets of gold. Most people knew it as prime commercial real estate, home to law firms, tech startups, and financial consultancies. What they didn't know was that floors 35 through 38 belonged entirely to Morgan Group, accessible only by private elevator, hidden behind a facade of shell companies and subsidiary names. I arrived at 7 a.m. using the executive entrance that connected directly to the underground parking structure. My Bentley, the one my family had never seen, slid into its reserved spot between the CFO's Maserati and my head of international developments, Tesla. The valet nodded respectfully. No questions about why the CEO preferred to arrive before the city fully woke. No questions about why the CEO preferred to arrive before the city fully woke. The private elevator rose smoothly, requiring both biometric scan and voice recognition. As the floors counted upward, I transformed. The simple boutique owner who'd served my father tea yesterday ceased to exist. By the time the doors opened onto the executive floor, I was E. Morgan, architect of a fashion empire that spanned continents. "Good morning, Ms. Morgan," my executive team chorused as I entered the main conference room. Coffee appeared at my elbow, Ethiopian single origin, prepared exactly as I liked it. The screens around the room already displayed overnight reports from our Asian and European operations. "Let's begin with acquisitions," I said, settling into my chair. "The Valdair transition. Smooth as silk," reported James Worthington, my VP of acquisitions. Their board was grateful for the buyout. They were hemorrhaging money faster than they'd admitted publicly. And their creative team? "We've retained the senior designers who show promise. The rest received generous severance packages. As for their model roster?" He paused delicately. "We've released all contracts as per your instructions, with the exception of 3 who fit our new brand direction. Rachel hadn't been one of the 3, of course." "The market response?" "Positive. Stock up 4% in overnight trading. The fashion press is calling it a strategic coup. WWWD wants an exclusive on your vision for the brand." "They can wait," I murmured. Reviewing the numbers on my tablet, Valdair would be profitable within 18 months under our management. Their previous leadership had focused on flash over substance, burning through capital for Instagram moments while ignoring the fundamental mathematics of luxury retail. Moving on to the European expansion, Elise took over. Her presentation crisp and efficient. "The Milan flagship is ahead of schedule. Paris is on track for a September opening. London." She hesitated. "We've hit a snag with the Mayfair location." "Define snag." "The property owner is Gerald Morgan." The room went still. My father's name hung in the air like an uninvited guest at a party. My executive team didn't know he was my father. I'd been careful to keep that separation absolute. To them, he was simply another over-leveraged real estate speculator who happened to own a building we wanted. Own a building we wanted. "I see," I said calmly. "What's his position?" "Desperate," James replied bluntly. "He's behind on taxes, facing foreclosure, but he's refusing our offer, holding out for a higher bidder that doesn't exist." "Double our offer," I instructed, "but structure it through the Cayman subsidiary. Make it clear this is our final proposal. If he refuses, we walk and leak our withdrawal to the press. The property will be worthless without an anchor tenant of our caliber." Elise made a note. "Shall I handle the negotiation personally?" "No. Send Dimitri. He has a gift for making stubborn men see reason." The meeting continued for another hour, covering everything from sustainable fabric sourcing to the launch of our first fragrance line. Throughout it all, I partitioned my mind, CEO in the foreground, daughter watching her father's empire crumble in the background. My phone, set to silent, lit up with messages. "Blake. Elise. I need a lawyer. Do you know anyone cheap? Rachel, why aren't you answering me? This is literally life or death. Dad, your brother is being railroaded. The family needs to stick together." I archived them all without responding. Let them stew in the uncertainty they'd so casually inflicted on others over the years. "Ms. Morgan?" Alicia drew my attention back. "There's one more matter. The Times piece on the mysterious E. Morgan. They're pushing hard for an interview. They've figured out you're a woman, though they haven't connected any other dots, yet. How close are they to the truth?" "Not very. They're chasing ghosts in New York, convinced you're connected to the Parsons School of Design because of your technical excellence." "Let them chase," I decided, "but have legal prepare cease and desist orders in case they get too creative with their speculation." After the meeting, I retreated to my private office, a corner suite with views stretching from downtown to the Pacific. The space reflected nothing of my public persona, no fashion magazines, no mannequins, no fabric samples. Instead, clean lines and minimalist furniture, punctuated by a single photograph on my desk, my mother in her boutique, circa 1995, teaching a younger me how to read the grain of silk. I worked steadily through the morning, approving budgets that would have made my father weep, authorizing expansions that would position Morgan Group as a dominant force in luxury retail for the next decade. Between spreadsheets and strategy sessions, I monitored my family's continued meltdown through various feeds and sources. Blake had hired a public defender. The FBI had seized his computers that morning, finding what my forensic accountants had discovered months ago, evidence of his participation in the bank's predatory lending schemes. He hadn't just been complicit. He'd been enthusiastic, earning bonuses for targeting vulnerable communities with loans designed to fail. My brother, who who'd mocked my bleeding heart concern for ethical business practices, was about to learn what happened when karma came calling with a federal warrant. Around noon, something interesting appeared on my security feed. Rachel stood outside the Havenmark building, staring up at its imposing height. She wore oversized sunglasses and a baseball cap, the universal disguise of the formerly famous. Her posed shoulders hunched, arms wrapped around herself spoke of someone gathering courage. "Alicia," I called through the intercom. "We're about to have a visitor. When she asks for E. Morgan, tell her I'm unavailable, but have security keep an eye on her." "Understood." I watched Rachel enter the main lobby, approach the information desk, gesticulate with increasing frustration. The receptionist, following protocol, politely declined to confirm whether E. Morgan was even in the building. Rachel's shoulders sagged as she turned away. Then she stopped, pulled out her phone. A moment later, my personal cell rang. "Elise, it's me. I'm downtown for a meeting. Wanna grab lunch?" The lie came so easily to her. No mention of her terminated contract, her maxed credit cards, her desperate attempt to meet the mysterious E. Morgan who'd just acquired the brand she'd pinned her future on. "I'm at the boutique," I lied just as smoothly. "Inventory day." Oh, the disappointment in her voice was palpable. "Maybe dinner then, I really need to talk to you. I'll let you know." I hung up and watched her exit the building. Defeat in every line of her body. She had no idea her big sister had been 50 feet above her, close enough to help but choosing not to. The afternoon brought a surprise. Our Tokyo office reported unusual activity. Someone was trying to hack into our systems, specifically targeting information about company ownership. "It's amateur hour," reported our head of cybersecurity via video link, "but they're persistent. The attacks are coming from multiple IPs, all traced back to Southern California." "Blake," I said with certainty. "My brother. The tech-savvy MBA. Trying to dig into Morgan Group. Looking for leverage. Perhaps. Or trying to understand why his bank had been so eager to finance certain fashion industry ventures that were now under scrutiny. Should we counterattack or just block? Neither. Let him waste his energy, but document everything. The FBI might find it interesting that he's attempting corporate espionage while under federal investigation." As the day wore on, the walls continued closing in on my family. The walls continued closing in on my family. My father's final loan rejection came through at 3:47 p.m. Blake's assets were frozen completely by 4.15. And Rachel, in a move that surprised me, pawned her last piece of valuable jewelry, a Cartier watch I'd given her for her 21st birthday. They were drowning, and I held all the life preservers. My desk phone buzzed. "Ms. Morgan, there's a Detective Martinez here. Says it's regarding an investigation into Western Pacific Bank." "Interesting. Send him up?" Detective Martinez was younger than I'd expected, with sharp eyes that took in every detail of my office. His partner, a veteran named Walsh, had the weathered look of someone who'd seen too much financial crime to be surprised by anything. "Ms. Morgan, thank you for seeing us. We understand you have significant business dealings in the fashion industry. Among other things, yes. We're investigating certain loans made by Western Pacific Bank to fashion startups that appear to be shell companies. Your name came up as someone who might have insight into these businesses. Blake's bank. Blake's schemes." And now they were sniffing around the edges of my empire, not realizing how vast it truly was. "I'm happy to help however I can," I said pleasantly. "Though I should mention my lawyers will need to be present for any formal questioning. Of course, this is just preliminary. We're trying to understand the network of relationships." Martinez pulled out a tablet, showing a complex web of company names and credit lines. "Have you heard of any of these entities?" I recognized half of them legitimate businesses Blake's bank had preyed upon, promising easy credit before crushing them with hidden fees and impossible terms. 2 had been potential acquisition targets for Morgan Group before the bank destroyed them. "A few," I admitted. "Tragic what happened to some of these companies. Predatory lending at its worst." Walsh leaned forward. "You seem well informed about their practices. It's my business to understand the market. When promising brands suddenly fail, I pay attention to why. Did you know Blake Morrison was instrumental in structuring these loans?" There it was. The test. Did I know Blake Morrison was instrumental in structuring these loans? There it was. The test. Did I know Blake Morrison? Would I admit the connection? "I've heard the name," I said evenly. I believe he was quite proud of his innovative lending strategies. At least, that's what he called them at industry events. Both detectives made notes. They asked a few more questions, dancing around the edges of what they really wanted to know: whether I had inside information, whether I'd been complicit or victimized, whether I could be a witness or a target. After they left, I stood at my window, watching the city prepare for another perfect Los Angeles sunset. My family was out there somewhere, scrambling for solutions to problems they'd created. They'd call me again tonight, I knew, beg for help from the one person they'd always dismissed as irrelevant. And I'd answer, eventually. But first, they needed to understand the full weight of their assumptions. The cost of their casual cruelty. The price of never looking beyond the surface. The boutique owner they pitied was about to reveal herself as the architect of their destruction. And unlike them, I'd built my empire on foundations that couldn't crumble: quality, ethics, and the radical idea that people should be seen for who they truly were. The sunset painted the sky in shades of revenge, beautiful and terrible in equal measure. Tomorrow, the real revelations would begin. But tonight, I had an empire to run. Wednesday arrived wrapped in marine layer. The kind of Los Angeles morning where the city seemed to exist in soft focus until the sun burned through. I woke to a symphony of notifications, my family's desperation reaching crescendo. Blake. They froze everything. Everything. Can't even buy gas. Rachel. Lost the apartment. Have 48 hours to move. Please call me. Dad. Emergency family meeting tonight. Your childhood home needs you. The childhood home he'd remortgaged 3 times. The one now facing foreclosure because he'd gambled it on yet another development deal that existed only in his imagination. I dressed carefully. Another one of my own designs disguised as department store mediocrity. The genius was in the cut, the way the fabric moved, details invisible to anyone who didn't understand that true luxury whispered rather than screamed. By 8 a.m. I was back at the boutique, but not alone. Alicia waited with a small team, ready to transform the space for what was coming. The lawyers have prepared everything, she reported, handing me a leather portfolio. The documentation is irrefutable. And the timing? Your father has a meeting with his last potential investor at 2 p.m. When that falls through, and it will, he'll be completely out of options. Perfect. What about the press? The Wall Street Journal goes live with the Morgan Group profile at 4 p.m. Eastern. They still haven't connected you to the family. But they've confirmed E. Morgan is female, under 40 and based in Los Angeles. I smiled. They're getting warm. We spent the morning orchestrating the final moves. Every piece had to fall precisely too early and the impact would dissipate. Too late, and my family might find alternative solutions, though given their spectacular talent for self-destruction, that seemed unlikely. Around 11 a.m. Vivian Chen appeared at the boutique door. I'd been expecting her since her husband's bankruptcy had finalized Monday morning. Elise, she said. Her usual polish cracked around the edges. I hope you don't mind me dropping by. Of course not, T. She nodded gratefully, following me to the back where I kept a small seating area deliberately modest, intentionally forgettable. I wanted to apologize again, she began. And also, I have a confession. I know who you are. I kept my expression neutral, pouring oolong into delicate cups. Oh. My niece works at Parsons. She was researching E. Morgan for her thesis on invisible influencers in fashion. She showed me a photo from a trade show in Milan 5 years ago. Someone caught you in the background, just for a second, but I recognized you. I see. I haven't told anyone, she rushed to add. And I won't. I just wanted you to know that someone sees you, really sees you. Your mother would be so proud. What makes you think? The dress you wore to the funeral. I touched it when I hugged you. That fabric doesn't exist at retail. That construction. I spent 30 years in fashion before I married money. I know haute couture when I feel it. I studied her carefully. Vivian, stripped of her social armor, reduced to honesty by circumstance. What do you want? I asked directly. Nothing. That's what I came to say. I want nothing from you. I just needed someone to know that I know. That not everyone in your life has been blind. After she left, pressing my hand with surprising warmth, I felt an unexpected crack in my carefully maintained composure. One person had seen through the facade. One person had looked beyond the surface. It was more than my family had managed in 20 years. The afternoon accelerated. Through various feeds, I watched my father's meeting implode. The investor, someone I'd had Dmitry warn off yesterday, didn't even show. Dad sat in the restaurant for an hour. Pride keeping him at the table long after hope had fled. Blake's situation worsened by the hour. The FBI had expanded their investigation, finding threads connecting him to a dozen other schemes. His lawyer, the public defender he'd scorned as barely qualified, had advised him to consider a plea deal. And Rachel had spent the morning dragging suitcases to a storage unit, her Instagram stories notably absent for the first time in years. At 3:47 p.m., I received the call I'd been expecting. Elise. My father's voice held a tremor I'd never heard before. I need you to come to the house. Family meeting. It's urgent. I'll be there by 7. No, now. Please. We need you now. The please almost made me waver. Almost. 7, I repeated. I have business to finish first. The boutique closed at 5 p.m. officially. I spent the next hour in my underground office, monitoring the Wall Street Journal article as it went live. The headlines started immediately. The Invisible Empire. How E. Morgan built fashion's most secretive powerhouse. Morgan Group's mystery CEO, the woman redefining luxury retail from shadow to spotlight, Morgan's billion-dollar revolution. The articles contained facts but no photos. Details but no personal information. They painted a picture of a fashion visionary who'd built an empire while maintaining complete anonymity. The press was fascinated. Fashion Twitter was exploding, and my various phones began ringing with interview requests. I ignored them all, changing into something appropriate for a family meeting where secrets would die. The dress I chose was one of my favorites, seemingly simple black jersey that moved like water and photographed like shadow. To my family, it would look like another unremarkable outfit. To anyone with eyes to see, it was $50,000 worth of perfection. The drive to Valdair took 40 minutes in traffic, winding up through the hills to the house where I'd learned that love was conditional and worth was measured in appearances. The modern monstrosity my father had built on the bones of our original home stood lit like a beacon, every window blazing as if light could ward off the darkness closing in. I parked the Prius between Rachel's abandoned Porsche and Blake's impounded Mercedes, now bearing a bright yellow boot, the family tableau, captured in automotive dysfunction. Rachel answered the door, mascara smudged, designer clothes wrinkled from stress. Thank God you're here. Maybe you can talk sense into them. Inside, the house echoed with the hollow sound of lives built on credit. The furniture remained for now, but I could see the gaps where artwork had been sold. The pale rectangles on walls marking disappeared investments. Blake sat hunched on the white leather sofa. Laptop open. Frantically typing. Still trying to hack into systems that would forever elude him. Dad stood by the windows, staring out at the city lights as if they held answers. She's here, Rachel announced unnecessarily. They turned to me, and I saw it then, the moment when the dismissed becomes essential. They needed me, or thought they did. They believed poor, simple Elise might have some savings to contribute, some connection to exploit. Some comfort to offer. Sit, Dad commanded, still trying to play patriarch even as his kingdom crumbled. We need to discuss the situation. Which situation? I asked mildly, choosing a chair that kept me separate from their cluster. Blake's federal investigation, Rachel's terminated contracts, your impending foreclosure. They stared. Rachel spoke first. How did you? I read the news. Blake's bank has been headline fodder for days. Rachel, your Instagram stories about new beginnings weren't exactly subtle. And Dad, you've been shopping for loans at every institution in the city. People talk. Then you understand why we need to come together, Dad said, switching to his salesman voice. Families support each other through difficult times. Do they? I tilted my head. I must have missed that lesson. Blake looked up from his laptop, anger flashing. This isn't the time for your victim complex. Ellie, we have real problems. Yes, you do, I smiled pleasantly. Federal investigation, possible prison time, financial ruin, social disgrace, very real problems indeed. Which is why we need to liquidate everything possible, Dad continued, ignoring the tension. Including Mom's boutique. I found a buyer willing to pay cash. Quick closing. It won't solve everything. But it's a start. There it was. The boutique I'd kept running. The space I'd honored. The foundation of everything I'd built. They wanted to sell it for scrap. No. The word dropped into silence. Elise. Be reasonable, Rachel pleaded. It's just a building. Mom's gone. Keeping it won't bring her back. The boutique stays. Blake slammed his laptop shut. You don't get to make that decision. We all inherited equally. 3 against 1. Actually, I said, pulling out the leather portfolio Elise had prepared. That's not accurate. Mom left the boutique to me alone. She also left me power of attorney over any family business decisions. It's all here. Notarized and filed 3 years ago when she updated her will. I set the documents on the coffee table. Watched their faces change as they read. She didn't trust you. I continued conversationally. Isn't that interesting? Even then, she knew you'd try to sell off her legacy the moment opportunity arose. This is fake, Blake snarled. You forged these? Feel free to have them authenticated. May I suggest Martindale and Associates? Oh, wait, they were your bank's law firm. Currently under investigation for fraud. Perhaps someone else. Dad picked up the papers with shaking hands. This gives you control of her entire estate, not just the boutique. Yes, including the investment account you didn't know existed. The one she built by being careful with money while you were all being careless. The one currently worth. I pretended to think. Well, enough to matter. How much? Rachel whispered. More than the quick cash you'd get from selling the boutique. Less than what you need to solve your problems. They exchanged glances. Calculations running behind their eyes. How much could they extract from me? How much guilt could they leverage? There's something else you should know, I said. Standing. The Morgan Group article that published today. The mysterious E. Morgan, everyone's talking about the woman who built a fashion empire worth $2.9 billion. I paused at the door, looking back at their expectant faces. Surprise. The silence that followed my revelation had weight, like the pause between lightning and thunder. I watched their faces cycle through confusion, disbelief, and that particular brand of fury that comes from realizing you've been profoundly, catastrophically wrong. That's impossible, Blake said finally, his MBA brain trying to process. E. Morgan is, the Wall Street Journal said, a fashion revolutionary, a business genius, the most successful female entrepreneur no one's heard of. I supplied helpfully. Yes, that's me. Hello? Rachel's phone clattered to the floor. She didn't pick it up. You're lying. You have that stupid boutique. You live in a studio apartment. You drive a Prius. I have multiple cars. I have multiple homes. I have multiple lives, apparently, since none of you ever bothered to look beyond the one you'd assigned me. My father found his voice, and predictably, it was angry. If this is true and it's not, it can't be. Then you've been lying to us for years, watching us struggle while you sat on billions? Lying to us for years, watching us struggle while you sat on billions? Interesting perspective, I mused. Tell me, when exactly did you struggle? When you were mocking my life choices at Christmas dinner, when you were offering me retail job suggestions at Mom's funeral, when you were trying to sell her boutique out from under me 5 minutes ago. We're family, he roared, the sound echoing off his empty walls. Are we? Because I remember asking for a $10,000 loan 8 years ago to expand the boutique. You laughed, said I needed to face reality and stop playing dress up that was different. I remember Rachel borrowing my designs for a fashion show in college, claiming them as her own, then telling everyone I was jealous when I objected. I was young. I remember Blake accessing my credit without permission, running up charges, then convincing you both I was financially irresponsible when I complained. That's not how it happened. Isn't it? I pulled out my phone, scrolled through saved messages. Would you like me to read the family group chat from 2 years ago? The one where you all discussed whether my mental health issues were why I couldn't succeed like normal people. They went pale. They'd forgotten that digital receipts last forever. But none of that matters now, I continued, putting the phone away. What matters is that you need help, and I'm the only one who can provide it. The irony is rather delicious, don't you think? So help us, Dad said bluntly. If you're so rich, so successful, help your family. Why? The simple question seemed to break something in Rachel. She started crying ugly. Genuine sobs that ruined what was left of her makeup. Because we're sorry. Okay, we're sorry we treated you badly. We're sorry we didn't believe in you. Is that what you want to hear? No, I said gently. Because you're not sorry. You're desperate. There's a difference. My phone rang. Alicia. I answered it on speaker. Yes. Ms. Morgan, I apologize for interrupting. The Times is holding on line 1. The Journal wants a follow-up quote, and your 8 p.m. conference call with Tokyo is confirmed. Also, the Valdair board is requesting an emergency meeting about the brand's new direction. Tell the Times no comment. Give the Journal the prepared statement about maintaining focus on quality over publicity. I'll take Tokyo from the car, and schedule Valdair for tomorrow afternoon. Yes, ma'am. Oh, and the forensic accountants found those offshore accounts you asked about. Sending the report now. Excellent. Thank you. Asked about. Sending the report now. Excellent, thank you, Alicia. I hung up to find my family staring at me like I'd grown a second head. That was real, Blake said slowly. That was all real. Every word. I checked my watch. Now, I have a conference call in 12 minutes that will affect the livelihoods of about 3,000 employees in Japan. So let's make this quick. Dad, you're going to lose the house. There's no saving it, you've leveraged it beyond recovery. Blake, you're going to prison. Maybe minimum security if you cooperate fully. The FBI has enough to convict you twice over. And Rachel, you're unemployable in modeling. Your reputation for difficult behavior has spread through every agency that matters. But, I continued, holding up a hand to stop their protests, I can help mitigate the damage. Dad, I'll buy the house through a trust. Let you live here as a renter. Below market rate. But you'll need to downsize your lifestyle dramatically. Blake, I'll provide a lawyer, a good one who might get you probation instead of jail time, but you'll have to tell the truth about everything. And Rachel, there's an entry-level position at one of my subsidiaries, not modeling marketing assistant, minimum wage to start. You'll work your way up like everyone else. That's humiliating, Rachel whispered. That's opportunity, more than you offered me when I needed it. Why would you help at all? Blake asked suspiciously. After everything. I thought of my mother. Teaching me to hem skirts in the back of the boutique. Telling me that elegance wasn't about what you wore but how you treated people when you didn't have to be kind. Because Mom would want me to. Because despite everything, you're still my family. And because I can afford to be generous in ways you never could. The dig landed. They flinched collectively. There are conditions, I added. Complete honesty with authorities. No more lies about your situations. No using my name or connection for any purpose. And you'll each write a letter, a real letter, acknowledging how you treated me and apologizing, not to me, to Mom's memory. You want us to apologize to a dead woman. Dad's pride flared one last time. I want you to acknowledge who you've been. Maybe that'll help you become better people. Or maybe not. Either way, those are my terms. My phone buzzed. Time for the Tokyo call. You have 24 hours to decide, I said, heading for the door. Elise will contact you with details if you accept. If not, best of luck. I'm sure your combined intelligence and charm will if you accept. If not, best of luck. I'm sure your combined intelligence and charm will see you through. Wait, Rachel called. Is it true about Valdair? Did you really buy the company that just fired me? I paused at the threshold. Yes, your final campaign photos were beautiful. By the way, you photograph well when you're not sneering. Pity about the attitude. By the way, you photograph well when you're not sneering. Pity about the attitude. Did you have me fired? No. You managed that all on your own. I just declined to interfere with the consequences. Outside, I took a deep breath of night air tinged with jasmine and exhaust fumes. The city sprawled below. Full of dreams and illusions. Success and failure. Truth and lies. My phone rang immediately. Tokyo. I switched to my professional voice, the one my family had never heard. Takeshi. Good morning. Yes, I've reviewed the projections. As I drove down from the hills, conducting billion-dollar business from my decade-old Prius, I thought about the meeting scheduled for tomorrow, the one where I'd reveal to my executive team that we were launching a new initiative, a foundation supporting young designers from disadvantaged backgrounds, funded by the acquisition of a certain Bel Air property. My family would never know that their childhood home would become a force for good, incubating the dreams of people like I'd once been. People dismissed by their families, underestimated by society, but burning with the kind of ambition that builds empires from boutique foundations. The call with Tokyo went well. 3 new stores approved, a partnership with a heritage textile manufacturer. Revenue projections that would make my father weep with envy. Throughout it all, I kept thinking about my mother's hands, patient and steady, teaching me that the strongest seams were often invisible. By the time I reached my real home, the penthouse my family had never seen, the city lights looked like a circuit board. All connection and possibility. Somewhere in those lights, my family was making decisions that would reshape their lives. They'd accept my terms. I knew. Desperation made philosophers of fools and beggars of kings. But that was tomorrow's drama. Tonight, I had an empire to run. A legacy to honor, and the quiet satisfaction of knowing that sometimes the best revenge isn't served cold or hot or even couture. Sometimes it's served with grace, with boundaries, and with the kind of success that speaks louder than any words ever could. My phone lit up with messages from the fashion world, all clamoring to understand the mystery of E. Morgan finally revealed. I turned it off, poured a glass of wine, and stood at my windows looking out at the city that had watched me build kingdoms from clotheslines. You were right, Mom, I said to the reflection in the glass. Elegance is about knowing who you are, even especially when no one else does. Tomorrow, the fashion world would want to know everything about E. Morgan. But tonight, I was just Elise, and that was enough. Thursday morning arrived with unusual clarity, the kind of Los Angeles day that made the city look like a movie set too perfect to be real. Day that made the city look like a movie set too perfect to be real. I'd been awake since 4 a.m. not from anxiety but from habit. The empire never slept, and neither did its architect. By the time My phone rang at 6:47 a.m. I'd already reviewed overnight reports from London, approved a capsule collection for Milan Fashion Week, and practiced the delicate art of being unreachable to everyone who suddenly wanted to reach me. Elise. My father's voice had aged a decade overnight. I need to talk to you. I'm listening. Not on the phone. In person. Please. There was something in that please, not manipulation this time, but genuine brokenness. I agreed to meet him at a small cafe in Santa Monica. Neutral ground where neither of us had history. He was already there when I arrived, hunched over black coffee in a corner booth. His Armani suit had been replaced by a simple polo and khakis, without the armor of assumed success. He looked smaller, more human. You look tired, I observed, sliding in across from him. I haven't slept. He studied my face as if seeing it for the first time. 20 years. You've been building this for 20 years, and I never saw it. You never looked? No, he agreed quietly. I never looked. The waitress approached. I ordered green tea, giving him time to gather whatever words he'd come to say. Your mother knew, he said finally. Didn't she? Some of it. Not the full scope. But she knew I was more than what I seemed. She was the only one who ever asked about my work with genuine interest. The boutique, that's where it started. That's where I learned. Every woman who came through those doors taught me something about desire, insecurity, transformation. Mom showed me how to see people, really see them. You taught me what happened when people refused to look. He flinched. I suppose I deserve that. This isn't about what anyone deserves. It's about what is. The FBI came to the house this morning, he said abruptly. About Blake. They wanted to know if I knew about his activities. I didn't. Elise, I swear I didn't know how deep he was in it. I know. You were too focused on your own schemes to notice his. That's not. He stopped, reconsidered. Yes, you're right. We sat in silence while my tea arrived. Around us. Santa Monica woke up, joggers passing the windows. Shopkeepers raising their gates. The ordinary world spinning on while our family's extraordinary collapse continued. I'll accept your terms, he said finally. The ordinary world spinning on while our family's extraordinary collapse continued. I'll accept your terms, he said finally. The house, the downsizing, all of it. But I need to know why. Why help us at all? We've been, he struggled for words. We've been horrible to you. Yes, you have. So why? I thought about how to explain 20 years of watching my family from the shadows. Loving them despite their casual cruelty. Building an empire they couldn't see while they pitied the life they'd imagined for me. It's about what you choose to preserve. Mom taught me that. You all forgot it. But I never did. His eyes filled with tears he was too proud to let fall. She would have been proud of you. She was proud of me. The difference is, she told me so. Another silence, heavier this time. Finally, he asked, what happens now? Now you learn to live within your means. You'll have a roof over your head and a chance to start over. That's more than most people get when they lose everything. And Blake, Rachel. Blake called his public defender this morning. He's going to cooperate fully with the FBI. It's his only chance at avoiding significant jail time. Rachel? I paused. It's his only chance at avoiding significant jail time. Rachel? I paused, having received her text an hour ago. Rachel is struggling, but she sent her letter, the one apologizing to Mom's memory. It was honest. She always was the most like you, he said, surprising me. Stubborn, determined, she just pointed it in the wrong directions. We all choose our directions. Yes, he agreed. We do. His phone buzzed. The real estate agent, probably. Or another creditor. The vultures were circling now that blood was in the water. He declined the call. There's something else, he said. Something I need to tell you about Mom's last days. When she was in hospice, she talked about you constantly. Not about Blake's big promotion or Rachel's modeling contracts. She kept saying, wait until you see what Elise becomes. Just wait. The words hit unexpectedly hard. I'd visited her every day during those final weeks. Holding her hand while she drifted in and out of consciousness. I hadn't known she'd been defending me to them even then. We thought it was the morphine, he continued. Delirium. But she was lucid. She knew exactly what she was saying. She knew what you were building. And she was trying to tell us. We just wouldn't listen. No, I said softly. You wouldn't. He reached across the table, not quite touching my hand but gesturing toward it. I'm listening now. Too late. But I'm listening. My phone vibrated. Alicia. With a message that made me smile despite everything. The Times wants to know if you'll comment on being called fashion's best kept secret. Also, your 10 a.m. with the Valdair board has been moved to 9:30. I have to go, I said. Standing. There's a company to run. Of course. He stood too. Awkward in this new dynamic where his youngest daughter held all the cards. Elise, will you? Would you consider having dinner sometime? Not about money or help or any of that. Just, dinner. Ask me in a year, I said, after you've had time to figure out who you are without the facade. I left him there with his cold coffee and warm regrets. Stepping out into the morning sun. My driver was waiting, not the Prius today, but the Bentley. I had a board to face, a brand to restructure, an empire to expand. But first, I stopped at the boutique. It was early, not yet open. But I had keys that had worn smooth from 20 years of use. Inside, everything waited in perfect stillness. The racks of carefully chosen pieces. The chairs where women had sat while my mother pinned their hems. The mirror that had reflected 1,000 transformations. In the back office, I found what I was looking for, Mom's notebook from her last year. Filled with sketches and observations. On the final page. In handwriting that showed her weakness. She'd written, "E understands that fashion isn't about clothes. It's about becoming who you're meant to be. The others will see it someday. Be patient with them, my darling. Not everyone can see past the surface. But that doesn't mean they can't learn." I touched the words gently. Then closed the notebook. She'd known. Of course she'd known. She'd seen me building in the shadows and loved me enough to let me do it my way, at my pace, without the weight of family expectations or interference. My phone rang. Elise again. The Valdair board is arriving early. They seem anxious. They should be. They're about to learn what happens when you mistake surface for substance. I'll be there in 20. As I locked the boutique and walked to my car, I thought about Rachel. Somewhere in the city, trying to reconcile the sister she'd mocked with the CEO who'd declined to save her career. About Blake. Sitting with federal prosecutors. Learning that actions have consequences that daddy's money can't erase. About my father. Alone with his coffee and his regrets. Finally seeing past the surface 20 years too late. They'd all learned to look deeper now. They had no choice. The comfortable blindness of privilege was a luxury they could no longer afford. But that was their journey. Mine led elsewhere, to boardrooms, where I'd reshape an industry. To workshops where young designers would learn that vision mattered more than pedigree. To a future my mother had seen even when I was still finding my way. The Bentley pulled smoothly into traffic, carrying me toward the revelations that would reshape Valdair, the brand that had built part of its image on my sister's beautiful, empty facade. They'd learned today what Morgan Group already knew, that true elegance came from authenticity. That lasting success required substance. That the most powerful transformations happened when you finally saw past the surface to what lay beneath. My phone buzzed with messages from the fashion world. The financial press. The 1,000 people who suddenly needed to know E. Morgan. I silenced it all. They could wait. The empire wasn't built on being available to everyone who finally decided you mattered. It was built on knowing when to be visible and when to vanish. When to speak, and when to let silence say everything. Today I would speak. Tomorrow. Who knew? But one thing was certain: the view from the top was spectacular. Especially when you'd climbed there in shoes everyone assumed were made for smaller journeys. The city blurred past the windows, full of dreamers and schemers, all trying to make it in a town that ate ambition for breakfast. I smiled, thinking of my mother's words, "Fashion isn't about clothes, it's about becoming who you're meant to be." I'd become exactly that. And now, finally, everyone could see it. Even the ones who'd never bothered to look. The Valdair board meeting had just concluded, leaving 11 shell-shocked executives trying to comprehend how their luxury brand had been hemorrhaging money while projecting success. I'd shown them the numbers, the real ones, not the fantasy figures their previous CEO had been hemorrhaging money while projecting success. I'd shown them the numbers, the real ones, not the fantasy figures their previous CEO had been peddling. They'd left understanding that E. Morgan didn't acquire companies to coddle them, but to transform them into something worthy of the Morgan Group portfolio. It was 2:15 p.m. when I finally opened the message I'd been avoiding all morning. Rachel's text, sent at 3 a.m., was raw in a way I'd never seen from her. "I can't sleep. Keep thinking about what you said. About Mom knowing. I threw up when I realized you were at every one of her chemo appointments while I was at Fashion Week. I'm not asking for forgiveness. Just wanted you to know I finally see it. All of it. The joke was never on you." I stared at the words, remembering my sister at 5, 10, 15, always reaching for something shiny, never noticing the solid ground beneath her feet. Maybe there was hope for her yet. Maybe. Elise knocked, entering with an expression I'd learned meant unexpected complications. Blake Morrison is here. Here? I set down my phone. In the building. In the lobby. Security has him contained. But he's insistent. Says he'll wait all day if necessary. I considered options. Having him escorted out would be simple, but Blake desperate enough to show up here was Blake who'd perhaps finally hit bottom. Bring him up. Conference room 3. The one with reinforced glass and excellent security. I wasn't completely naive about cornered animals. 20 minutes later, my brother sat across from me, and I barely recognized him. The designer stubble was gone, replaced by hollow cheeks. The confident swagger had evaporated, leaving someone who looked disturbingly like our father had that morning, broken and bewildered by his own choices. They're going to indict me, he said without preamble. Multiple counts. The lawyer says I'm looking at 5 to 10 years if I don't cooperate. And if you do cooperate? 2 years. Maybe 18 months with good behavior, he laughed bitterly. Good behavior. Like I know what that looks like. Why are you here, Blake? He pulled out a folder, thick with documents. I started going through everything last night, building my defense, trying to understand how deep I was in. And I found these. I opened the folder. Transaction records. Emails. Internal memos, all documenting loans made to fashion startups over the past 3 years. I targeted them because of you, he said quietly. Not you specifically, I didn't know about. All this, he gestured vaguely at the executive floor. But I knew fashion was growing, knew there were designers desperate for capital, so I created products targeting them, predatory products. I scanned the names, recognizing several. Miranda Wu, she had a promising accessories line. Had. Past tense. We destroyed her. 30% interest compounding daily. Hidden in the fine print. She lost everything. David Esperanza. I remember his work from the fashion incubator. Blake said evenly. It was suicide. 6 months back. After we seized his gear, his inventory, even his notebooks. Everything was collateral. The list went on. Dreams destroyed. Talents wasted. Creative spirits crushed under the weight of impossible debt. All because my brother had seen an opportunity to exploit hope. Debt, all because my brother had seen an opportunity to exploit hope. So you want, what absolution? I can't give you that, no. He met my eyes for perhaps the first time in years. I want to make it right. Or as right as it can be made. I have some money hidden, not from you, apparently, since you seem to know everything, but from the FBI. About $2 million in cryptocurrency. I want to give it to them. The designers. The ones still alive. Anyway. That's not enough to rebuild what you destroyed. I know, but it's what I have. He slumped in his chair. Did you know Mom tried to teach me to sew once I was maybe 12? Said understanding construction would help me in business someday. I laughed at her, said I'd hire people for that kind of work. I remember. You said creative work was for people who couldn't do real business. Yeah, he stared at his hands. Turns out I couldn't do real business either. Just theft with extra steps. I studied my brother. This stranger who shared my DNA but had never shared my values. He'd hit bottom. But was it enough? Would it stick? I'll make you a deal, I said finally. You transfer that cryptocurrency to a trust I'll establish. I'll match it, dollar for dollar. We'll use it to create a fund for designers who've been victims of predatory lending. Not just yours, the entire industry's. You'll serve on the board, using your knowledge of these schemes to help others avoid them. You'll do this for 10 years minimum, regardless of your legal situation. Why would you trust me with that? I don't. That's why there'll be oversight, transparency requirements, and immediate removal if you backslide. But you know how these predators think because you were one, that knowledge, properly directed, could help people. He was quiet for a long moment. 10 years is a long time. You destroyed careers that took longer than that to build. 10 years is generous. Fair, he pulled out his phone. I'll transfer the funds now, before I lose my nerve or the FBI finds them. While he worked, I thought about redemption. Second chances. The distance between who we were and who we could become. My mother had believed in transformation, it was the heart of her business. Helping women see themselves differently. Could it work on character as well as appearance? Done, Blake said, showing me the confirmation. 2,047,000, and change, everything I had hidden. The paperwork for the fund will be ready tomorrow. Alicia will send it to your lawyer. He stood to leave, then paused. That night at Dad's house. When you revealed everything, I hacked into your systems afterward. Or tried to. I know. We let you think you were getting somewhere to see what you were after. Of course you did, he almost smiled. Your security is incredible. Military-grade encryption. AI-driven threat detection. How long have you been at this level? Since before you got your MBA. And we never knew. We sat at Christmas dinners mocking your little boutique while you were running a global empire. We're idiots. No, I corrected. You were cruel. There's a difference. Idiots can't help themselves. You all chose not to see me. Yeah, he agreed. We did. After he left, I stood at the windows, looking out at the city. 3 members of my family had now made their pilgrimages, each arriving at truth from different angles. Dad broken by failure. Rachel shocked by revelation. Blake hammered by consequences, each seeing me clearly for the first time. 20 years too late. My phone rang, a number I didn't recognize, though the area code was local. Is this Elise Morgan? The voice was professional. Careful. This is Patricia Williams from the Times. We're running a profile on E. Morgan, and we've discovered some interesting connections. I'm wondering if you'd care to comment on the relationship between Morgan Group and your family's recent difficulties. So, the press had connected the dots. It was inevitable, really. Too many public records. Too many ways to trace the truth once they knew where to look. No comment, I said pleasantly. But thank you for your interest. Ms. Morgan, our sources indicate that you've been running Morgan Group for 15 years while your family believed you were struggling. That's quite a story. The public would be fascinated. I'm sure they would. Have a lovely day. I hung up and immediately called Alicia. The Times has the family connection. Prepare the crisis communication team. Already on it. Legal suggests we get ahead of it. Control the narrative. No, let them publish. The truth isn't a crisis. That evening, I returned to the boutique one more time. Tomorrow, the story would break. The carefully maintained separation between Elise and E. Morgan would collapse. The fashion world would dissect every interaction, every family slight, every moment of willful blindness. But tonight, I had the silence of my mother's space. The piece of good work done quietly. The satisfaction of an empire built on foundations my family never thought to examine. The phone rang again. This time, I answered. Elise, Rachel's voice, tentative. I know you probably don't want to talk to me. What is it, Rachel? I just wanted to say, I started the marketing assistant job today. The one at your subsidiary. They don't know I'm your sister. I didn't tell them. Good. It's hard. Like, really hard. They have me organizing fabric swatches and updating spreadsheets. My feet hurt and my boss is maybe 23-3 and she's kind of mean. Welcome to entry level. Yeah. A pause. I keep thinking about what you said. About mom seeing people. I never learned that. I only learned to see myself. It's a skill that can be developed. Do you think, her voice cracked. Do you think she'd forgive me, Mom, for missing so much time with her? I closed my eyes, seeing our mother in her last days, still finding beauty in the world, still believing her children would find their way to wisdom. I think she already did, I said softly. The question is whether you'll forgive yourself. I'm trying. It's hard seeing who I really was. That's where transformation begins, with clear sight. After we hung up, I locked the boutique for the night. Tomorrow would bring revelations, crisis, opportunity. The fashion world would learn that E. Morgan had been hiding in plain sight, building an empire while her family built houses of cards. But that was tomorrow's challenge. Tonight, I drove home in the Prius. One last time as the invisible Elise. The woman they'd pitied. The daughter they'd dismissed. The sister they'd never bothered to know. At a red light, I caught my reflection in the window and smiled. My mother had been right, as always. Fashion wasn't about clothes. It was about becoming who you were meant to be. And sometimes, that becoming required others to finally see what had been there all along. Friday dawned with the kind of media frenzy I'd anticipated but never quite experienced firsthand. The Times article had dropped at midnight. The Invisible Heiress. How E. Morgan built a billion-dollar empire while her family mocked her thrift store aesthetic. They'd done their homework. Photos from family gatherings where I stood in the background. Quotes from society pages where my family discussed their less fortunate relative. Financial records showing the empire rising while my family's fortunes fell. The juxtaposition was devastating in its clarity. By 6 a.m., my phone had logged over 400 calls. Fashion bloggers, financial analysts, documentary producers, and every distant relative who'd suddenly remembered we were family. I turned it off and went for a run along the beach, needing clarity before the storm fully broke. When I returned to Meridian Towers, building security informed me that news vans were already gathering outside. The invisible years were officially over. Your father is in the lobby, the head of security added quietly. He's been here since 5. Says it's urgent. I found him sitting in the same chair where countless fashion executives had waited to pitch their dreams to Morgan Group. He looked smaller somehow, diminished by the marble and glass that spoke of power he'd never achieved. "The article," he said without preamble. "They made us look like monsters." "No," I corrected, joining him in the seating area. "They reported facts. How you look is a reflection of how you behaved." They quoted things from private conversations. From family dinners. How did they? Social media. Dad. Rachel live-streamed half our family gatherings. Blake posted constantly about his banking success while mocking retail workers. You gave interviews to Society magazines about your real estate empire while mentioning your daughter in fashion retail with barely concealed disdain. It's all public record. He absorbed this. Aging before my eyes. The phone hasn't stopped. Former friends, business associates, all calling to express shock, to distance themselves. One actually said he'd always suspected you were special, and we were fools. Historical revision. People love aligning themselves with success after the fact. Elise, he leaned forward, desperate. This is destroying us. Rachel can't leave her apartment, photographers everywhere. Blake's lawyer says this publicity makes a plea deal harder. And no one will return my calls. What did you expect? I asked, genuinely curious, that I would build this quietly forever. That the truth wouldn't eventually surface. I expected. He stopped, shaking his head. I don't know what I expected. Not this. Not my daughter protecting us while we diminished me. Dismissed me. Mocked me for choosing passion over perception. Yes. The word came out, for choosing passion over perception. Yes. The word came out raw. All of that. My phone buzzed with a text from Alicia. Emergency board meeting in 30. The Tokyo partners are thrilled with the publicity. Milan wants to accelerate the flagship opening. And Anna Winter's office called. The business didn't stop for family drama. It never had. I need to go, I told my father. There's a company to run. Of course, he stood slowly. I just wanted to say, the house. You don't have to buy it. I'll let it go. Start fresh somewhere smaller. It's time I faced reality. The offer stands. You need stability to rebuild. Despite everything, I won't leave you homeless. Despite everything, he repeated. That's more than we deserve. I left him in the lobby and took the express elevator to the executive floor. The usual quiet professionalism had been replaced by electric energy. Assistants fielded calls. The PR team worked multiple screens, and my senior staff waited in the main conference room with barely contained excitement. The numbers, James announced as I entered, are extraordinary. Web traffic up 3,000%, social media engagement through the roof, and sales, he actually grinned, up 47% since midnight. The fashion world loves a reveal, added our CMO, especially one with this much drama. We're trending globally. I took my seat at the head of the table. Good, now let's talk about what actually matters. The foundation launches today as planned. Yes, Elise confirmed. The Miranda Wu Recovery Fund, supported by the Blake Morrison Restitution Trust. First grants available Monday. Double the initial funding, I decided. This attention brings responsibility. Every designer destroyed by predatory lending should know there's hope for rebuilding. The Times wants a follow-up, our PR director said carefully. An exclusive interview, on the record. Your choice of journalist. No, let the work speak. With respect, she pressed. The story is out there now. We can shape it, or let others define it. She had a point. I thought of Mom. Always teaching me that presentation mattered, not for vanity but for clarity of purpose. One interview, print only, Patricia Williams at the Times, she did the research. She gets the exclusive. But we talk about the future, not the past, the foundation, the expansion, the vision for sustainable luxury. My family is off limits. Understood. The meeting continued. Covering everything from security protocols my anonymity had provided protection I'd now lost to accelerated expansion plans. The reveal had created opportunity, and Morgan Group would capitalize on it. Afterward, I found myself in my office, staring at the city through floor-to-ceiling windows. My personal phone, the one only family knew, showed 17 missed calls from Rachel, 3 from Blake, and a single voicemail from a number I recognized as my Aunt Martha's. I played it on speaker. Elise, darling, I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. We all are. Your mother tried to tell us. But we were too proud to listen. She'd be so proud. We were fools. All of us. Complete fools. Delete. The desk phone buzzed. Ms. Morgan, Rachel Morrison is in the lobby. She says she's your sister. I'd wondered when this would come. Security knows to expect her. Send her up. Rachel arrived looking like she'd dressed in the dark, mismatched designer pieces that screamed panic rather than style. Her face, usually perfectly contoured, showed signs of crying and sleepless nights. Your office is. This is. Showed signs of crying and sleepless nights. Your office is. This is. She turned in a slow circle, taking in the space that proclaimed power in every line. This is really yours. Yes. I've been in the building before, for go-sees when I was starting out. I never got past the 3rd floor. She laughed shakily. Wouldn't take me then. Won't take me now. For different reasons. Sit, I suggested. You look ready to collapse. She folded into a chair. Designer bag clutched like armor. The photographers followed me here. They're shouting questions about whether I'm a gold digger, whether I knew all along, whether I'm here begging for money. Are you? No, she met my eyes. I'm here to quit. That surprised me. You've been at the marketing job for exactly 1 day. And I'm terrible at it. I don't understand spreadsheets. I can't remember product codes. I spent 3 hours trying to organize fabric swatches, and my supervisor had to redo everything. Tears started falling. I don't know how to work, Elise. I never learned. I only know how to pose. So learn? How? The word came out as a wail. I'm 32 and I can't do entry-level work. Everything I touch turns to disaster, just like our family. We're poison. Self-pity doesn't suit disaster, just like our family. We're poison. Self-pity doesn't suit you, I said crisply. And we're not poison. We're people who made choices. The difference is whether we learn from them. Easy for you to say. You built all this, she gestured at the office. While I built nothing but an Instagram following that's now sending me death threats, I pulled out my phone and called down to HR. The new marketing assistant in Division 7. Morrison. Yes, I want her transferred to the boutique training program. Starting Monday. Yes, I know it's unusual. Make it happen. What are you doing? Rachel asked as I hung up. Make it happen. What are you doing? Rachel asked as I hung up. Giving you a chance to learn from the beginning. Our boutique program trains sales associates in the fundamentals: customer service, inventory, basic business operations. You'll work in our street-level store here in the building. The pay is the same, but you'll learn what fashion actually is when you strip away the glamour. You want me selling clothes? I want you understanding that every transaction matters. That the woman buying a scarf deserves the same respect as the one buying couture. That fashion is about service, not just surface. She wiped her eyes, smearing what was left of her mascara. Why help me have been horrible to you? That article. Those quotes. I actually said those things. Yes, you did. And you'll live with having said them. But Mom believed in transformation. So do I. Whether you take this chance is up to you. I'll take it, she said quickly. I'll sell scarves. I'll organize inventory. I'll do whatever, she said quickly. I'll sell scarves. I'll organize inventory. I'll do whatever it takes to learn. Good. Report Monday at 8 a.m. Dress code is all black. Minimal jewelry. Comfortable shoes. You'll be on your feet for 9 hours. She stood to leave, then paused at the door. The dress. At Mom's funeral. You made it. Didn't you? Yes. It was perfect. I see that now. Understated but flawless. Everything I pretended to be but wasn't. She tried to smile. Maybe one day I'll understand fashion the way you do. Maybe. Or maybe you'll find your own way. That's what Mom always said. Fashion isn't about copying someone else's style. It's about finding your own truth. After she left, I had 5 minutes of peace before the Times interview. 5 minutes to think about transformation. Second chances. And the strange journey that had brought my family to their knees, while lifting me to heights they'd never imagined possible. Patricia Williams arrived precisely on time, digital recorder in hand and eyes sharp with intelligence. She'd broken the story that ended our careful separation of lives. Now she'd help write the next chapter. So, she began. Settling into her chair. Everyone wants to know, how does it feel to be visible? I considered the question, thinking of shadows and light, of building in silence and revealing in thunder. Like taking off a coat I no longer need, I said finally. Useful while it lasted, but the weather's changed. She smiled, understanding the fashion metaphor. And your family? Off limits, as agreed. Then let's talk about the future. Morgan Group just announced a foundation for designers affected by predatory lending. The timing seems pointed. Fashion has always been about transformation, I replied. Sometimes that includes transforming mistakes into opportunities for redemption. Is that what this is, redemption? It's what fashion has always been, the chance to become something new while honoring what came before. My mother taught me that in a 20 by 30 foot boutique. Now I teach it across 63 stores worldwide. The scale changes. The principle doesn't. The interview continued for an hour, covering business philosophy, expansion plans, the vision for sustainable luxury that would define Morgan Group's next decade. Through it all, I kept thinking about my family, scattered across the city, each grappling with the collapse of illusions they'd mistaken for truth. As Patricia prepared to leave, she asked one final question: any regrets about the years of invisibility? I thought about all those family dinners. The dismissive comments. The casual cruelty of being unseen by those who should have looked closest. Dom? No, I said firmly. Every designer knows that the most important work happens before the reveal. The years they didn't see me were the years I learned to see myself. That's worth more than recognition. Even from family. Especially from family. Their blindness taught me to value my own vision. I wouldn't change that lesson. Even if I could. She left with enough material for a dozen articles. I remained at my desk as the sun set over Los Angeles, painting the sky in shades of revelation and reckoning. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. The boutique would open with Rachel behind the counter, learning humility one transaction at a time. Blake would meet with federal prosecutors, trading information for the possibility of redemption. Dad would sign papers accepting my offer, beginning his journey from emperor of nothing to tenant of truth. But tonight, I sat in my tower of glass and ambition, no longer invisible, no longer dismissed, no longer the family disappointment who played with clothes while real life passed her by. The city lights sparkled below. Each one a dream. A desire. A chance for transformation. Just like fashion. Just like family. Just like the empire built from a mother's wisdom and a daughter's refusal to be less than she was born to be. The phone rang again. This time, I let it sing. The Havenmark Tower conference room had never felt smaller than it did that Saturday morning. Despite its vast expanse of polished wood and glass, I'd call this meeting the first and last time my family would see the full scope of what I'd built. They arrived separately, each carrying their new reality like ill-fitting clothes. Dad in a borrowed suit, having sold his Armani collection, Blake in khakis and a polo, out on bail with an ankle monitor beneath his sock. Rachel in the black uniform of a Morgan Group sales associate, having just finished her first week of actual work. They sat on one side of the conference table. I sat alone on the other, with the city sprawling behind me through floor-to-ceiling windows. This is my company, I began, gesturing to the presentation screens that line the walls. 18 brands, 63 stores, 8,000 employees across 6 continents, annual revenue of $2.9 billion. The numbers appeared on screen: profit margins, growth projections, market penetration analyses. My family stared at data that represented 20 years of their willful blindness. The boutique on Cypress Avenue is our flagship incubator. What you thought was mom's failing legacy is where every major collection begins. The street you mocked for being unfashionable, I own the entire block. More screens lit up property deeds. Architectural plans. The underground complex they'd never imagined existed. But you lived in a studio apartment, Rachel said weakly. Drove that old Prius. I own 14 properties globally. The studio is the penthouse at Meridian Towers. The Prius was camouflage. Like everything else you chose to see. Blake leaned forward, the businessman in him still functioning despite everything. The corporate structure. How did you hide this? The regulatory filings alone. Shell companies, subsidiaries, foreign holdings, all legal, all transparent to anyone who bothered to look beyond surface assumptions. You were all so certain I was failing that you never questioned the obvious signs of success. What signs? Dad's voice cracked with frustration. The clients who traveled internationally to visit our little boutique. The fashion editors who mentioned me in buried paragraphs you never read. The times I declined your financial help, without panic. The fact that I never asked you for anything after that first loan rejection 8 years ago. Silence settled like dust. On screen. Images cycled through fashion weeks in Paris and Milan, where I'd shown collections. Magazine covers featuring my designs. Celebrities in custom pieces they'd never known were mine. Why show us this now? Blake asked. To hurt us more. No. To free us. All of us. I stood. Walking to the windows. You've spent 20 years trapped by your assumptions about me. I've spent 20 years hiding to avoid disrupting those assumptions. We've all been prisoners of the same lie. So what happens now? Dad asked. I turned back to face them. Now you know the truth. What you do with it is your choice. The financial help I've offered stands not because you deserve it, but because I choose to give it. The conditions remain the same. The letters, Rachel said suddenly. The apology letters to Mom. You wanted us to write them before you revealed this. Why? Because apologizing to me would have been performed for gain. Apologizing to her memory was just truth. She's the only one who matters in this story. She saw what I could become and loved me through the becoming. You saw what you wanted to see and loved the image, not the person. That's not fair, Dad protested. We loved you. You loved your idea of me, the struggling artist daughter, the simple one who inherited Mom's hobby, the family project you could pity to feel better about yourselves. I returned to my chair. But that ends today. From now on, you deal with who I actually am. Which is what? Blake's question held genuine curiosity. Who are you? Really? I'm the woman who built an empire while you built houses of cards. I'm our mother's daughter in ways you never understood. I'm someone who learned that true power comes from being underestimated. I smiled, thinking of Mom. And I'm done hiding. The presentation ended. The screens went dark. My family sat in the shadow of revelations that would take years to fully process. There's one more thing, I said, pulling out a small wrapped package. I found this in Mom's things at the boutique. It's addressed to all of us. Dated a week before she died. Out a small wrapped package. I found this in Mom's things at the boutique. It's addressed to all of us. Dated a week before she died. I've been waiting for the right moment to open it. Inside was a letter in her careful handwriting, and 4 small velvet pouches. I read aloud, my darling children, if you're reading this together, then perhaps time has begun healing what pride divided. In each pouch is a button from my wedding dress, the one dress I never sold, never altered, never let go. I've carried these buttons for 40 years as reminders that the most beautiful things in life are often hidden in plain sight, waiting to be recognized by those who truly see. We each took a pouch. Inside was an antique pearl button, luminous despite its age. Elise understood this first. The letter continued. She saw beauty where others saw ordinary. Value where others saw worthless. Possibility where others saw endings. I pray that someday you'll all see what she sees. That transformation isn't about changing who you are, but revealing who you've always been. Rachel was crying openly now. Blake stared at his button as if it held answers. Dad clutched his like a lifeline. She knew, he whispered. She knew everything. She knew enough, I corrected. And she loved us anyway. We sat in silence. 4 people sharing DNA and decades, but only now beginning to share truth. Outside. Los Angeles stretched toward the ocean. Indifferent to our small family drama, but somehow made more beautiful by it. I should get back to the boutique, Rachel said finally. My shift starts at noon. My supervisor says I'm improving. Slowly, but improving. I have a meeting with the federal prosecutor Monday, Blake added. Full cooperation in exchange for minimum security. Maybe I can teach financial literacy there. Help people avoid what I did to them. And I signed the house papers Tuesday, Dad said, downsizing to a rental, starting over at 72. He attempted a smile. Your mother always said I was a late bloomer. They stood to leave, and I surprised myself by saying, Sunday dinner? Tomorrow? My place? My real place? 7 o'clock? They stared. We hadn't shared a meal without lies between us in 20 years. Dinner? Tomorrow? My place? My real place? 7 o'clock? They stared. We hadn't shared a meal without lies between us in 20 years. Just dinner, I clarified. No business. No apologies. Just food and whatever conversation happens. I'll bring wine, Dad offered. The good stuff I've been saving. I'll cook, Rachel said. I've been learning. YouTube mostly cook, Rachel said. I've been learning, YouTube, mostly. But I'm getting better. I'll handle dessert, Blake added. There's a bakery near the halfway house that makes Mom's favorite cake. After they left, I remained in the conference room, holding my mother's button up to the light. It caught the sun, throwing tiny rainbows across the polished table, beauty hidden in plain sight, waiting for the right angle of vision. Alicia appeared in the doorway. The Times interview published an hour ago. It's already been shared 100,000 times. The headline reads, The Fashion Revolutionary Who Hid in Plain Sight. Any surprises? She kept her word. Family stays off limits. The focus is entirely on the business and the foundation, although, she smiled slightly. She does end with a quote about how the best designs often come from understanding what it means to be unseen. Clever. Will you read it? Later. Right now. I have a boutique to visit. The original boutique on Cypress Avenue was quiet that afternoon, just a few customers browsing the carefully curated selection. I moved through the space, straightening a dress here, adjusting a display there, remembering my mother doing the same things with the same care. In the back office, I opened her notebook again. Turning to a page I'd memorized. Fashion is transformation, but family is the fabric. Both require patience, skill, and the willingness to see potential where others see flaws. Through the window, I watched Rachel helping a customer, her movements still uncertain but earnest. She held up a scarf, explaining something about the fabric, and for a moment I saw our mother in her gestures, the same careful attention, the same desire to help someone see themselves differently. Messages from the fashion world, the financial press, the 1,000 people who suddenly needed E. Morgan's attention, but I silenced it all. Choosing instead to sit in the quiet of my mother's space, holding a pearl button that had witnessed vows and promises. Love and disappointment. The whole messy beautiful truth of family. Tomorrow would bring Sunday dinner awkward. Probably painful. Definitely real. My family would sit at my actual table in my actual home, and we'd try to build something new from the ruins of what we'd been. It might work, it might not, but we'd try. Because that's what fashion taught you, that everything could be remade. That seams could be strengthened. That even the most damaged fabric could find new purpose if you approached it with skill and love and ruthless honesty about what you were working with. The sun set over Cypress Avenue, painting the boutique in golden light. Somewhere in the city, my father was learning to live smaller. My brother was preparing to trade information for freedom. My sister was discovering what work actually meant. And I sat in the space where it all began. No longer invisible. No longer hiding. Finally seen for exactly who I'd always been. My name is Elise Morgan. I built an empire in the shadows of my family's assumptions. I honored my mother by becoming myself. And I learned that the best revenge isn't served cold or hot or even couture. It's served with grace, with boundaries, and with the quiet satisfaction of knowing that the most beautiful transformations happen when we finally stop hiding our light under designer bushels. The boutique door chimed. Another customer. Another chance for transformation. Another moment in the endless, elegant conversation between who we are and who we're becoming. I stood, smoothed my simple black dress, and went to help them see.